She woke up in a tomb, alone except for the vermin and the dust motes dancing in the scant moonlight filtering through cracks in the vault. She was entombed alive. No one knew what drove the Countess to murder her own child. Perhaps it was madness, perhaps despair. The girl was half dead, burned with fever, and they nursed her back to health without knowing if she'd ever wake again. But when she did, she was changed. The fire in her eyes was gone, replaced by something dull and flat. The villagers called her a walking corpse. The Countess watched her from afar, knowing what a hollow victory that was. For Isidora wasn't saved, not really, because in surviving, the girl had become a shell, haunted by the memory of what was lost, a whisper of the lively girl she once was. The life that throbbed within her was cold, distant, echoing the chill of the grave. Even now, some say the villagers hear her voice on nights when the river runs high, and the old stone chapel weeps. How? Do you want to hear more tales like this one? We're eager to know what you think. Your feedback means a lot to us, so don't hesitate to share your thoughts below. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Why? Who did this to her? Fragments of memories flickered, the suffocating heat of the wedding chapel, the insistent pressure of her husband's hand on her trembling one, and then nothing but crushing darkness. Was there some fiendish jest of her overbearing mother? Had the old Countess bribed the priest to murder her only to inherit Isidora's vast dowry? Or was it the groom? The thought sent a fresh wave of panic through her. If he orchestrated this, he must have planned her demise for weeks. Hadn't he already had 2 wives? What had they died of? Fever? Most likely. But what about her? Was there poison in her blood even now, making her heart its own cold tomb? Panicked, she tried to claw at the lid. The fine wood splintered under her desperate assault, but the space above remained frustratingly shut. Then, remembering the ring her mother had forced upon her, a wedding band of heavy gold, she pressed it against the nearest crack. It was meant to keep her safe. Her mother had said, passed down from queen to queen, though what peril it was meant to guard against, God alone knew. Maybe, just maybe, the metal would pry the lid loose. With the little strength she could muster, she wedged the ring deeper. Hope surged as a thin sliver of light appeared, growing larger as the lid finally gave way. Gasping, she pushed herself upright, collapsing onto the damp stones with a sob. Shaking, she stumbled out of the crypt, back into the hall. Moonlight streamed through high windows, illuminating swirling dust and cobwebs. A chill wind snaked around her ankles. She was barefoot, clad only in her nightgown. She remembered the hours before, the fever, the terror, and fled into the storm. Rain lashed her face, wind tore at her hair. The river was a raging beast, swallowing the far bank, the bridge now just a precarious thread stretched over the churning water. Still, she ran, stumbling blindly until she saw the faint glow of dawn breaking over rooftops. Exhaustion pulled at her, threatening to drown her in its dark depths. Just a little further, she croaked, collapsing against a tree when the first rays of sunlight touched her skin. Pain exploded, searing and white-hot, forcing a scream from her throat. She writhed on the ground, clawing, then everything went black. In the end, they found her by the river, alive but delirious. That concludes our chilling tale. And now we eagerly await your comments. Did you find yourself captivated by the story? Do you ever feel like you're going crazy? Like the world around you is solid, real, substantial, while you are utterly, terrifyingly unreal? She was in the chapel, but not the chapel. The building was steeped in shadow, the roof caved in, the stained glass windows shattered, the altar overturned. Scrawled on the far wall, barely visible beneath the grime and decay, were the letters IV. The bride gasped, her fingers flying to her mouth. She knew those initials. They were hers. How could she have forgotten? The hours passed like centuries. The air inside the coffin was thick and foul, pressing down on her lungs like invisible hands. She clawed at the interior, her knuckles cracking against the brass nails that sealed her fate. Her throat shredded from screams, her mind bending, unraveling. Her wedding ring a twisted band of gold with a tiny ruby dug into her finger as she thrashed. And with one final, ragged motion, she carved her initials into the wood above her face. Ivy, some say it was divine intervention. Others believe it was the work of a grieving servant who returned to the crypt, unable to sleep with the guilt of what they'd witnessed. But whatever the truth, the lid was pried open hours later by lantern light. What the man saw drove him to silence forever. Isidora's eyes were bloodshot, her face streaked with dried tears and gore. Her lips, chewed and trembling, whispered only one word before she collapsed into unconsciousness. Why? She was brought back to the chateau, alive but irrevocably changed. Her hair had grayed at the roots, her hands shook violently, and her eyes never blinked for long. She no longer spoke unless spoken to, and even then, only in riddles and mutterings. When asked what she remembered, she would shudder and reply, "I was not alone down there." The townspeople recoiled in awe and terror. Whispers spread of a cursed bride who returned from the dead. Some called her a miracle, others a warning. Count Emile, however, did not rejoice at her return. His face, pale as wax, revealed not relief but dread. He had remarried only a week after her burial, something no one had questioned until now. The second bride vanished nights after Isidora's return, vanished without a trace. Servants swore they heard muffled wailing echoing from beneath the chapel. One maid, brave or foolish, descended into the crypt. She emerged screaming, her hair turned white as frost. She refused to speak of what she saw but left the chateau the very next morning, and was never seen again. Isidora wandered the halls like a shade. She wore her tattered bridal gown by candlelight, singing lullabies in forgotten tongues. The children of the village dared each other to peek through the gates at night, hoping to catch a glimpse of l'Amorie Revenante, the returned bride. No one dared go near the place after dusk. Then, one autumn morning, the chateau was found empty. No servants, no count, no bride. Only silence and a staircase leading down into the crypt left open, gaping like a wound. Dust motes danced in slivers of moonlight that slanted through gaps in the ruined roof. As she stumbled toward the crumbling structure, something glinted in the dust. At first she thought it was a spider, then a beetle, then a bat. It wasn't until it stirred and reared up on its haunches that she realized it was a cat. A large, sleek black cat with eyes like polished emeralds. It regarded her with an unnerving intensity, then yawned, revealing a pink tongue and startlingly white teeth. Like a ghost haunting a world that isn't yours, that's how the bride felt. She whispered, her voice hoarse from disuse. The cat didn't answer, didn't move. It simply stared at her, unwavering, unblinking. And then it was gone, melting into the shadows like smoke. The bride touched her neck, feeling the smooth surface of her skin. It was cold. She was alive. So why did the cat, if cat it was, regard her with such disdain, such utter lack of recognition? And why was she here? Why had she been brought back? She remembered nothing beyond the stifling darkness and the coppery taste of blood in her mouth. She remembered terror and a suffocating loneliness so profound it seemed to be a physical presence, pressing down on her chest, making every breath a monumental effort. And then the sound, a scratching, dragging sound like fingernails on slate, always just beyond the range of hearing, teasing her with its presence, never quite becoming clear. But worst of all, she remembered the smell, a cloying, sickly sweet aroma like overripe fruit and decay. It clung to her, seeped into her skin, became part of her. When consciousness finally returned, she found herself in a place that was both familiar and alien. Who are you? Then she saw it, a ghastly bride in a blood-stained veil, an ancient lullaby in a forgotten tongue, overgrown with vines and ivy, swallowed by time and superstition. Yet stories lingered like perfume on a corpse. Decades passed. His journal entries from that day grew increasingly erratic, filled with drawings of eyes, coffins, and cryptic phrases in Latin. He died in an asylum a year later, muttering, "She's still down there, not dead." And if you enjoyed this ghostly tale, be sure to check out more stories like it. Thanks for watching. Just waiting. Wars came and went, but once a year on the date of Isidora's death, candles are found burning on the hillside. Some say they hear the faint chimming of wedding bells. Others claim to see a pale figure walking among the tombstones in a blood-stained veil. And somewhere, beneath earth and stone, a voice sings a lullaby in a tongue no one remembers. waiting to be heard again. Children grew old, and their children forgot. But the crypt remained, and a ghostly groom who never made it to the altar. These are the spine-chilling tales that echo through the halls of Chateau d'Artois. Several coffins had been disturbed, their contents missing or mangled. A cold draft snaked through the chamber, and though the sky was cloudless, a single ray of sunlight glinted through a hole in the ceiling, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. In one corner of the chamber, beneath a wall of crumbled plaster, Lucien uncovered a hidden passage bricked over with ancient mortar. With trembling fingers, he brushed away the centuries, revealing a dark opening. Holding an oil lamp aloft, he peered inside. At the end of the tunnel, he saw what appeared to be a small stone room. With each step, the air grew colder, the silence heavier. A love story cut tragically short and a haunting melody that refuses to be silenced. The estate was abandoned in 1924. A group of historians from Paris ventured to the ruins to document what remained. Among them was a young archivist named Lucien Gaultier, whose grandmother once served as a maid at Chateau d'Artois. As the others measured foundations and sketched what was left of the ballroom, Lucien descended into the crypt. Driven by curiosity, or perhaps by fate, he discovered nothing unusual. The crypts of the dastardly Duke and his family were well known, and there had been countless morbid tourists eager to catch a glimpse of them. Over the years, grave robbers had also paid a visit, leaving their calling card of misplaced bones and shattered coffins. But something about this scene disturbed him deeply. As he rounded the corner, he saw a coffin resting against the far wall. It was crafted from dark wood, bound with iron hinges. The air grew frigid and Lucien felt a sudden, inexplicable urge to flee. But curiosity, or perhaps a morbid sense of duty, compelled him forward. With shaking hands, he pushed open the lid. Inside, amidst velvet lining, lay not a skeleton, but a perfectly preserved bridal gown. It was white satin, heavily embroidered with pearls and lace, the sort favored by brides in the late 18th century. As Lucien stared in disbelief, something glinted beneath the folds. He reached inside and retrieved a ring. It was twisted gold with a ruby set in the center, and carved into the lid of the coffin in frantic strokes with the letters IV. Startled by his discovery, Lucien stumbled back. The draft from earlier had grown to a gale, and the single ray of light that had illuminated the crypt now pierced the darkness of the tunnel, seeming to beckon him back to the safety of daylight. He fled the subterranean labyrinth, not daring to look back. Lucien left the place in silence. The photographs he took were never published. Today, the Chateau d'Artois is lost to history. Maps do not mark it. Locals refuse to speak of it, because some brides never rest. They merely sleep until someone wakes them. What would you do if you found a hidden crypt while exploring an abandoned chateau? Let me know in the comments below.